The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance is a Netflix series that acts as a prequel to the 1982 film The Dark Crystal. Like many other movies, shows, music videos, and current events we've reviewed on this channel, The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance contains many hidden in plain sight messages for the living souls in regards to ascension, energy extraction, shadow projections, and what it truly means to live this game out till the end. Here's how the tale goes. The Crystal of Truth lies at the center of the realm of Thra. It is the heart of Thra and the source of all its life.
At its center, the Crystal of Truth, the heart of Thra, and the source of all life.
This parallels the truth about our realm, in which the center, true north, lies the wellspring of all. The Aurora Borealis, which is macrocosmic heart energy, has no beginning or end. The center points of our energy fields are endlessly connected to the center of our realm, just like how the crystal connects everything in Thra. Thra was in perfect harmony for many millennia, but over time, the Crystal of Truth became the Dark Crystal after it was cracked and a shard broken off. The crystal was now taking energy from Thra, and this energy being used by the Skeksis, a race of predatory reptilian bird-like creatures who have usurped the crystal. In secret, they gather to steal the life force of the crystal, calling themselves the Lords of the Crystal. Thra is home to the Gelflings, and there are 7 clans, one of which lives below ground. The Gelfling is naturally a heart-based being, but when the Crystal of Truth became the Dark Crystal, the Skeksis used this corruption to create an energy extraction enslavement system for all creatures of Thra. Most of all, the Gelfling. The 7 clans were now divided, and once a false system of security, hierarchy, and loyalty was devised, the Gelfling willingly submitted to the Skeksis' rule. In the show, there's a tree called the Sanctuary Tree. The Sanctuary Tree connects the below-ground world to the above. This refers to the Tree of Life, a symbol of regeneration, transmutation, and connection, which is an ancient symbol within many cosmologies. It is the Axis Mundi. There's an episode in which one Gelfling, Deet, travels above ground after a special interaction with the Sanctuary Tree, who tells her of the Darkening. The corruption of the crystal has created the Darkening, and now she is to climb above ground to warn the others. This refers to the necessity of confronting darkness through letting the subconscious and unconscious, everything that remains hidden within one's being, to rise up. Entering the territory of the unfamiliar in order to discover the true self. Like the below merging with the above in singularity. We think of Plato's allegory of the cave, in which one of the many prisoners chained to stare at shadows on a wall is released and finally taken outside of the cave in order to experience the true reality. But in experiencing that depth, he realizes the lie he has been living. Ignorance can no longer remain. This is just like the process we have been going through. Once we realize that a darkening has occurred within our own consciousness, once we recognize that there is something to be resurrected, we are no longer underground, we are no longer in the shadows. What was sundered and undone shall be whole, the two made one. This is the prophecy within the Dark Crystal verse, spoken of by Mother Aughra, inscribed within the Wall of Destiny. She is the embodiment of Thra, acting as the world's eyes and voice. Aughra is a character analogous to the Great Mother Sophia. She is ancient, powerful, and wise. She's the Great Mother archetype who is not separate from her creation. Aughra is a creature of all things mysterious and embodies all races, all genders, all song, and is the very essence of the world of Thra itself. Interestingly, the phrases Mother Aughra, Lady Emerald, Queen Goddess, and Queen of Earth all equal the same value in Jewish gematria. We have not just been on Earth. The matrix we've been in is a womb, and the Mother Goddess is the thread that connects us to the center. We're not speaking of a tyrant or God one must worship. We're talking about an omnipresent goddess energy which cultivated us, one we aren't separate from. Just like how Aughra is Thra, but the crystal is Thra, but the Gelfling are Thra. It's all connected.
I am Mother Aughra! I am Thra!
Aughra has one eye, and this parallels the story of Odin, who willingly plucked out his eye to trade for a drink of wisdom. Just like Odin sacrifices his eye, Aughra sacrifices herself throughout the series in order to correct things in Thra. So, what was sundered and undone shall be whole, the two made one. This is clearly duality coming together. According to the prophecy, this merging of the two into one occurs through the efforts of one Gelfling, who replaces the crystal shard to the crystal, transforming it from the dark crystal back into the crystal of truth. Duality merging together. This is shown at the end of the first movie, but we'll get back to that. Many truthers and spiritualists will probably watch the Dark Crystal and think the Skeksis refer to an elite ruling class who torments an unwitting slave population, but they are actually the embodiment of all of the darkness, all of the muck that's produced from fear, reaction, duality, and helplessness within our own psyches. The Skeksis have no life separate from the life-giving energy of Thra's crystal. They are fueled by deception, mockery, intimidation, and a cannibalistic attitude towards existence. The Skeksis are not evil, however. They were once a part of beings called the UrSkeks. The UrSkeks were a race of creatures not native to Thra. The Dark Crystal lore tells us a group of fallen UrSkeks were banished from their homeworld to Thra. They sought to purify themselves through the power of the Dark Crystal, but in doing so, each of the fallen UrSkeks accidentally divided themselves into two separate beings. The violent, deceptive, materialistic Skeksis, and the gentle, wise mystics, also known as the Uru. Instead of being cleansed of their darker natures as they had intended, each UrSkek was split into two beings.
Our experiments on the crystal broke us into two.
The Skeksis and mystics.
The Skeksis embody the materialistic, parasitic side of the UrSkeks' nature. They're shadows that they wanted to cleanse, but now run rampant. What does this sound like? This kind of sounds like what's been happening here. We have split away from our Hyperborean selves from the center. Therefore, the center, or the 0 point, has been flooding our realm with energy extraction so we can deal with our own shadows, just like the separation between the Skeksis and the Uru. Despite the separation, there is still a spiritual link between each Skeksis and Uru counterpart. For example, if an Uru dies, its Skeksis counterpart dies, and vice versa. They are only two halves of the same being. You have been orchestrated by what we've called our higher self during this whole time. In this process, these forms, which are really shadow projections, have been nourished and guided by our eternal Hyperborean selves. Just like how the Skeksis were always still connected to the Uru, and ultimately come back together at the end of the original Dark Crystal movie, when the shard is replaced. So this is how duality is personified. The UrSkeks are noble beings that carry a powerful light. This is unity, but shadows lurked within these fallen UrSkeks, and therefore their darker nature split away from them, materializing as seemingly separate entities known as Skeksis, who now parasite off Thra. Our own unrecognized shadows created a split from our true form, encasing the living souls within a purging process. This is just like the story of Adam and Eve, who were in paradise, but were banished after experimenting with the knowledge of good and evil. Right now, The living souls are exponentially incorporating all of the shadows we had left unmerged as the rise towards Ascension progresses. Just like the mystics in the original film incorporate their Skeksis counterpart, becoming whole again, we are incorporating our shadows, and it shall converge into a singularity in which the separation between our higher and lower self is no longer. No more separation between spirit and matter, or light and dark. Many of you who watch my videos are familiar with the Hermetic principle of as within, so without. What remains unseen or undealt with on a conscious level must always play out as fate through a series of dramas. And this is what our existence within this false reality has been like. We are ultimately whole. No lasting separation can occur, just like how the Uru and Skeksis are the same. There is only the illusion that they are separate. We go through a purging process by observing what the so-called darkness manifests. The energy extraction matrix on Earth is but a temporary facade. It's completely fallible because it never was, just like how the Skeksis have no true sovereignty away from the crystal. They are automations of cruelty. Because they are temporary fragments of the UrSkeks, we could see them as shadows. They do not exist. The true nature of the eternal self is at ease, is creative, regenerative, and communal. So any plague which seems dark, terrifying, and monstrous, within or without yourself, must be a charade, like the universe haunting itself to make known a correction that must take place. This is why, in episode 9, Aughra implores the Skeksis, what happens to you when your part of the song is done? Maybe nothing is all that waits for you. Because at the end of this game, all shadows will have been purged and thus merged. Fear doesn't exist when the heart is fully incorporated. The crystal of truth at the center of Thra symbolizes the heart, the 0 point, macrocosmically where the aurora borealis awaits our full integration. When the heart is fully activated in our collective purging effort, all that was split becomes whole again. Darkness is transmuted into truth. After all, the dark crystal is the crystal of truth. What was sundered and undone shall be whole, the two made one.
What was sundered and undone shall be whole, the two made one.
The center had been put on a temporary lockdown, a hex put on the heart, and that energy got pulled into a dualistic framework. We speak about this at length in prior videos. After all, energy cannot be destroyed, only transferred. The crystal of truth was never destroyed, just turned temporarily corrupt. The same goes for our journeys. We can only forget, but we can never lose ourselves. We've basically been in a collective schizophrenic episode, walking through our own fragmented aspects in order to reincorporate them. In Thra, the Great Conjunction is a cyclic event that happens when the three suns meet. The Great Conjunction is the end of the world. It signifies when the crystal is restored.
What's the Great Conjunction? You tell me.
The Great Conjunction is the end of the world! Or the beginning? End, begin, all the same, big change.
This phrase, the Great Conjunction, equals 1441 in Jewish gematria. This is referring not only to the 144,000 living souls who are almost done with this purging process, but also the year we are currently in. It is currently year 1441 in the Islamic lunar calendar. Are you ready to rise? Are you? I am. Let's do this. The Skeksis are terrified of death, even though they are sustained through death. Let me ask you, is death something to fear? Death is nothing more or less than change and rebirth. You die many times a day to make way for the new and authentic. Within the cycle of reincarnation, we had to die to roll the die once again, over and over until we reach the grand exit portal. A shadow meets its end sooner or later, because one that can only extract is one who truly doesn't exist. This is why the Skeksis are so fearful of death, so much that they accidentally create the Darkening, a spread of decay and fear that aims to take over Thra. The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, focuses around the Gelflings discovering that the Skeksis' rule is a reign of terror. Upon realizing that they are using the Dark Crystal to suck life force from Gelflings, a series of trials ensue, leading to a rebellion. I won't get into more specifics, but from the first episode to the last, there's an unveiling process the viewer witnesses. Apocalypse means unveiling. We are in the unveiling now, and have been. To see clearly is to break free from reincarnation and the bondage it brings. But in order to break free, we had to experience the bondage, to remember the values of authenticity, of truth. The Gelflings in this series deal with a lot of suffering when going from ignorance to realizing the uncomfortable truth, that they have been living an illusion. The series ends with the creatures of Thra banding together, putting aside their differences, and finally challenging the Skeksis. The 7 clans band together to become one again. This refers to the breaking of the prism, which has split us into a system of 7, as I've detailed many times in prior videos. No longer is there a sever within the oneness that never died. And we're kind of left with a cliffhanger after a successful rebellion by the Gelfling. It's destined to occur that this current existence erupts into a golden age and merges back with the long-lost unity that upholds truth. The crystal of truth lies within, and activated, pulls us closer and closer, true north. Keep up the great work.